Hi, and welcome back to Tuesdays with Tuesday. I'm Tuesday, and I write fantasy fiction under the name Mary E. Twomey. I write contemporary romance under the name Tuesday Embers, and cozy mysteries under the name Molly Maple. But today, we're going to do the next chapter of Taste, which is fantasy fiction under the name Mary E. Twomey. So this is book 1 in the Tearaway series, and if you haven't seen the videos of chapters 1 through whatever chapter we're about to read right now, you'll be hopelessly and incredibly lost, which probably isn't the way you want to start your day or end your day. So I recommend reading or listening to, reading those ones first. So today, look at this beautiful hardcover. I just love it. I'm very lucky to have a good graphic designer, actually several that are just wonderful to me. Today we're going to read chapter 22. And before we start, look at this cutie cute, like spooky kind of bookmark. I got that for free from our library. When was the last time you frequented your local library? If it's been more than a month, I suggest making a little trip because it's kind of fun. They have free bookmarks. Chapter 22, A Council of Children. We were met with cautious eyes and a quiet hush that fell over the room when we entered. For all the weirdness I'd been introduced to that day, I let out a yelp of shock when I saw the company that stood at our entrance. Ezra, Danny, Vaughn, Langham, and Mason were there, but there were others who terrified me to my very soul. I tried not to let my nerves show beyond widened eyes and my slight intake of breath, but inside I spluttered a constant stream of, holy crap, holy crap. Any chance at writing this whole tearaway thing off as a bad dream was obliterated as I took in the members of the council. Sitting at the foot of the table was a creature with the body of a totally ripped man and the head of a horse. No kidding, a horse. And not the majestic black beauty kind. This dude had a pure black head with no spots and a light brown toned body. His midnight colored mane was long and had 3 thick braids woven through the tresses. He stared at me with his angry black eyes that conveyed emotion like a human. It was the same reverse centaur from the painting in the foyer I'd seen when I'd first walked into the mansion. He'd had a sword in the painting. Judging by this one's scowl, I guessed he wasn't the type to relish sitting in a conference room. Ezra took the lead, introducing me to each member, starting to his left with the horse guy and moving clockwise around the long conference table. Lady October, it's my pleasure to introduce King Caballo. He rules over Silo, which is where the Tikbalangs reside. Hey man, I offered lamely, feeling like a kid who totally didn't belong at the magical grown-up table. Caballo snarled, daring me to say something he could cling to as a social faux pas. Given that I had no knowledge of their societal rituals, I swallowed my distress and kept my mouth shut, lest I offend him and get, I don't know, whinnied to death or something. Ezra moved down the line, looking pleased that I hadn't had my head bitten clean off by the horse dude. This is Queen Sylvia. She's the newly instated ruler of Lumipad. She's a Manas, or a Manangal. When no one bothered to explain what the crap a Manas was, I guessed perhaps that was their word for woman, since she was the only other one in attendance. Sylvia was curvy and clad in a short brown leather dress with frayed edges. She wore tall black combat boots that looked to split the difference between decorative and meaning business. She had pale skin and frizzy red hair pulled back into a high ponytail. When she bowed her head to me in greeting, I jumped when leathery black bat wings unfolded from behind her, draping out from her shoulder blades. Okay. Manas isn't their word for woman, it's whatever Batgirl Sylvia is. Her chin and forehead jutted out unnaturally, so when she turned to yell at Ezra, her profile almost looked like a half moon. I thought you said the omen was of age. This is a child, Ezra. Children cannot be awakened. This little guy's joining us. I stood straighter, frowning. I didn't even know these people, and already I was being given the label of a useless child. I glanced down at myself, wondering, not for the first time, what it was about me that screamed 15-year-old kid. Ezra was patient. Lady October is 22 and has already been awakened. She is well suited to serve out the role of an omen. Sylvia wore a tight-lipped expression while she sized me up to see if I'd be an asset or a liability. Back at you, girlfriend. They were all pretty tall, except for a stooped old man with a face like an old yellow potato. Goblin, I thought with a grumble. His sparse white hair was slicked back into a ponytail, and his long, matching beard was tied similarly below his chin. He had a hump in his back and pointy ears, looking sort of like an old, evil Christmas elf. He eyed me with superior skepticism, as if daring me to be as useless as he'd been predicting. When he opened his mouth, I saw he had no teeth at all. She's a human's. I can smells it on her. There's no way she's one's of us. Ezra stood at attention at the head of the solid wood oval-shaped table. He'd changed into a crisp white dress shirt and navy trousers. His pale lavender and blue striped tie set off his aqua eyes. Ezra possessed the stylishness of a fashion monger, mixed with the effortless perfection of a man who couldn't have cared less about such things. The combination, coupled with his perfect posture, made him look positively regal. Lady October is half matriculan, and she has already been awakened, so whatever disparaging remarks you have to say about her abilities or my judgment, you can save them for another day, Titus. That you've been invited here to meet her is a courtesy I did not have to extend. I owe the goblins nothing, especially after 2 of your kin attacked her earlier this evening. The old Christmas elf, goblin, shook his gnarled fist into the air. I half expected Titus to threaten to bring Ezra coal for his stocking. You owes the goblins as the same you owes everyone else who's here's. Just because we aren't starvings yet, doesn't mean as we like watching nations dies around us. My eyes drifted to a military-looking man as Titus and Ezra went back and forth. Judging by the rigid way he stood and the expressionless observation of me, I guessed he was one of those who were already calculating a takedown when he met a person. He had short, sand-colored hair and trimmed sideburns that framed his classically handsome face. I inhaled sharply when I noticed what could only be described as gills along both sides of his throat, stretching into his black no-frills t-shirt. He nodded to acknowledge me, and I returned to the gesture. Captain Finn Fredo, he said, not ceasing his careful study of me, as if I was the one with the freakishly cool gills. I maintained my stance of not speaking, lest I open my mouth and start a scream that might never stop. Or maybe I'd make a fool of myself by asking if I could poke at his gills to see what they felt like. My craziometer was a little hard to predict at this point. For some reason, I felt a tug in my chest that led my head to snap towards Vaughn. Though he appeared silent and professional, I could tell by his narrowed eyes and flared nostrils that he despised Captain Finn on a level that went far deeper than he stole my bike. There was a baser, soul-level hatred that I was surprised I could read so easily. I wondered if I could feel his swings because of our Omen-Reaper connection. I'd never seen a half-horse, half-man in an office setting, nor had I seen a Batgirl with a crescent moon-shaped face, or a soldier with gills. The solid wood floor and the beige walls with the obligatory ficus in the corner made the surreal creatures stand out all the more in their total weirdness. Lang's flies buzzed in an irritated circle around his head. We don't have all night for this, Ezra. Let's get started. Vaughn led me to the nearest chair and sat me down, standing behind me like a guard beside Mason. He had a raised tilt to his chin that dared the others to cast us out from the cool kids meeting he was finally allowed a place at. Though, to be fair, Danny and Vaughn weren't given chairs. They were made to stand, making it clear that they weren't to have a say in things. I didn't love that I'd been given a chair so easily, when I couldn't even name 3 restaurants in Tearaway. Ezra held up his hands to the others, who quieted as they sat. Your family's throne isn't represented today, so Mason, would you do the honors and sit in your brother's place to speak for Hayop Nation? I see the nation of zombies still isn't represented. Mason glared at Ezra, his full lips pursed through his half-inch thick beard. I gave up my claim to the high-up throne years ago. Call my brother. Surely he can spare half an hour to shake hands with the new Omen. King Carter didn't answer my summons. If you would. Ezra motioned to the empty spot beside Caballo. When Mason sat down, the horse snorted derisively, like a snotty junior hire. I didn't have amazingly high hopes for the council, since they all seemed to be a little antagonistic. Ezra was the only one standing. Mary Yang had entered silently to take her spot during the introductions. She dragged her chair to sit against the wall with the grace of a delegate bred for keeping her cool in heated political situations. It was as if she was making a point of not joining the table. She would cooperate, but wouldn't participate in such poorly veiled aggression. Danny stood beside her chair, his hand on her shoulder like a sentry. There was too much "don't you dare look at me wrong" tension, and I hoped these delightful little meetings wouldn't be a daily thing. Ezra held up his hands, quieting the murmuring. "I've called you here today to introduce you to the new Omen. She was awakened only yesterday, and I summoned you all first thing. After a few days of adjusting and learning what's expected of her, I fully anticipate things turning around for each of your kingdoms." Lang stood, pressing his hand to the table to control the meeting. He leaned forward in frustration that Ezra was beginning with the part he already knew. "My minions saw her just yesterday morning with the lost Sagrado stone." This was apparently a huge deal. Chatter broke out among the ranks, along with gasps and more questions Ezra didn't have an answer to. Captain Finn stood when the horse dude pounded his fist on the table, demanding I get it first thing and lay it at his feet. Jag. I quirked my eyebrow, not bothering to stand. Ollie's constant wisdom echoed in my ear. Keep your chin up. Take it slow. It was good advice to have in a room filled with too many hot heads. "Caballo, is it? I'd like to know who you think you're talking to. I'm not laying anything at anyone's feet, and you'll calm yourself down about it. There's no use ordering me around like a fool. You don't even know me." Caballo's massive nostrils widened as he straightened at my level-toned scolding. "If you knew the king I am, you wouldn't dare speak so boldly." I waved my hand dismissively, as if his fit-throwing was boring to me. "I know enough. Now be a good puppy and sit when you're told." Ezra was talking, not you. I cast Ezra a slight bow of my chin to communicate I was on his side. Captain Finn's mouth dropped open in amusement, and I saw a flicker of a laugh in Lang's dark eyes. Whatever. If Caballo wanted me to know he was a threat, I had to establish right off the bat that I would not be threatened. "I've hanged men for less." Caballo was tall, brawny, and clearly pissed, but aside from the horse head and magical land aspect, I'd met hundreds of him. Entitled men who couldn't be bothered to shut up and play nice. He had to be in charge, but I never had the patience to coddle that kind of attitude when there was actual work to be done. I tilted my head up at his anger, knowing I'd won, since he had the flaring temper of a child. I crossed my arms over my chest and let a breezy, "I friggin' dare you" smile brush across my lips. "Hanged, eh? Well, that settles it. You're the scariest little pony I know." Ezra turned to me after holding up his hand to quiet the room that had quickly dissolved in chaos. "Is this true, Lady October? Do you have the Sagrado stone?" Ezra's formal address threw me. Could someone show me a picture of whatever it is you're looking for? If you're thinking I have some magic rock or something, I am not aware of it." I kept my chin level, refusing to be intimidated by the seething I could feel coming at me from Caballo. He was easily 7 feet tall and looked like one wrong move from me might make him snap. Not that I'd done anything, but, show up and sit down at the table. The tool. "I'll look through my stuff when I get home if you can tell me what it is I'm searching for." "I can do that," Ezra nodded. "If she does have the stone, then that changes things. We'll need at least a week or two of her topside, helping Marianne catch up on the reaping more souls before she goes under to the different regions." Finn leaned forward, his knuckles on the table. "Do you understand what this would mean? If she could bring the lost Sagrado stone back to the people, we wouldn't need to rely so heavily on the omens." Excitement lightened Finn's bright green eyes as he sat back in his chair and thought. This would change everything. "What do you need from us? What are you thinking?" He scratched at his flesh-colored gills that appeared soft and flexible. I stared at the oddity with probably impolite fascination. I had a civilized answer already, but when my mouth opened, "You've got gills!" popped out. I winced, closing my eyes, and hung my head, wishing I could bang my cranium against the table. I could feel the upper hand slipping through my fingers as Mason chuckled under his breath. Finn narrowed one eye at me, and I could see clearly in that small glimpse that his good looks were just for show. Dude was a killer with very little conscience. I'd seen the same coldness in a good many inmates. His voice lowered as he stared at me with the same size-up I'd fixed Caballo with. "Yes, and you've got legs." I looked down, not noticing anything weird about my legs or his. That better have been a compliment. The corners of Finn's full lips curved upward in a sardonic impression of a genuine smile. Oh, it was. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Vaughn stiffen and snarl with distaste. Captain Finn is second in command of Dagat under King Bannock. Vaughn pulled a cigar and lighter out of his pocket, turning the end to evenly heat the tip. He couldn't get his hands on a good pair of legs unless his king commanded him to. Finn narrowed his eyes at Vaughn, seeming to weigh some option with which to dismantle Vaughn's perpetual smugness. Sylvia frowned, her bat wings drooping in time with the corners of her lips. "Could you smoke that thing somewhere else? It's close quarters in here, Duende." Vaughn let out a long puff of smoke, unperturbed. "I'm afraid not. See, I am her reaper, so I need to be in this meeting. This here cigar keeps me from vamping out and biting all of you." Sylvia scoffed, looking down her nose at Vaughn like he was scum. "You couldn't turn us. You're no threat. You're only a little half-vamp. Almost useful for sport, but not quite. One little trip to Lumapad, and my people would see you turned to your full bestial potential in an hour. You wouldn't be so smug, crawling around on all fours like a dog." "Hey, watch it," I warned her, throwing sisterhood out the door sooner than I'd hoped. Vaughn touched his tongue to his canine tooth that was slightly longer than the others. "Turn you, Queen Sylvia? Why would I want to do that? No. I'd simply lose control and kill you. Can't have the Queen of Lumapad dying in Ezra's house, can we? At least not with so many witnesses roaming about." Ezra shot Vaughn a look of deep displeasure. "You'll keep your veiled threats contained, son. Have a seat, Queen Sylvia." The old hunched goblin redirected the conversation, adding in a snide, "But who should be granted a pieces of the stone? Surely not the Lumapads. They're always in the middles of some uprisings. I barely gets to know the new rulers' names anymore. The turnover's so fast." Titus's beady eyes gleamed with greed. "I should get the stone firsts. Goblins have the most magics to protect." Mason stiffened. "You don't make the rules, old man. Ezra's in charge, so you'll defer to him and not make things difficult. I live in Sambi, and it matters if it's abandoned to ruin. You'll live in the dead of heat with the rest of Tearaway, but Sambi's turned into a frozen wasteland. It's nearly impossible to get through it if you don't know what you're doing." "Why should I care where you lives? What are yous to me? You abandon your peoples to go hides out in Sambi? Deserters to their thrones mean nothings to me. It's a disgraces you're permitted to sit at the table with us in your brother's stead." Something in me I didn't recognize stirred protectively when Sylvia had laid into Vaughn, and that very same indignation rose up when Titus was snotty to Mason. I didn't understand all the lingo, but I knew a blowhole when I saw one. I pointed my finger at the old Keebler elf as my upper lip curled in disgust. "You'll watch your mouth, boy. If Ezra wants Mason at this table, you'll accept it, or you can go on back to Hobbitville for all I care." Finn let out a snicker that he fought unsuccessfully to conceal, shooting me an appreciative look I ignored. "Boy!" the goblin guffawed, his overlong lips opening wider than should be possible. "You dares tell me how to speaks to a deserter?" Mason did not defend himself, but sat back in his chair and took it with what was almost a bored expression. "She can dare tell you whatever she'd like. You're nothing without her and Lady Marrying." Mason narrowed his eyes at Titus and leaned forward to verbally jab at the old goblin. I know what kind of a power-hungry, arrogant king you are. I know you tied yourself to your people using the Tahi charm. Mary Ann gasped, but apparently everyone who regularly showed up for council meetings already knew that. I raised my hand. What the crap is a Tahi charm? Mason's eyes flicked over to me. It's a binding charm. He blessed himself so that his life is tied to his people. If he eats, all the goblins are full. Oh, well, then why doesn't every ruler do that? I mean, if there's a famine and all. Ezra was patient. The downside is that if Titus is killed before he can remove the charm, the entire goblin race dies with him in an instant. It's a very dangerous risk, but in the end, each ruler is free to reign how he or she sees fit. Titus turned to me and snarled like I was an annoying bug he had to pay respect to. That's why we should get at pieces of the stone first. I want to lift the Tahi charm so my peoples aren't so at risk of sudden deaths. I saw Mary Ann's chest move up and down like she was having trouble breathing properly. Her head began to sway as her body started losing its grip on the perfect posture she'd been maintaining up until that point. Her eyelids were drooping, and she looked utterly exhausted. I felt for the poor girl. Langham held up his finger. The Sagrado Stone should be brought to my land first. We're the first ones to suffer when the famine strikes. We've lost the most lives and need the most immediate aid. Caballo tossed out his large arm with an accompanying snort of derision. Are you saying the rest of us haven't watched our buhay crops dry up? We haven't seen our people up and die? You're just as entitled as your father. King Jian's never once shown up to a council meeting. He sends you instead. And you know what? Shame on me for actually believing you might be different. Entitled? Is that how you see me standing up for my people who are at death's door? You know the famine hits us the hardest. I know you whine about it the loudest. Those were fighting words. And Danny and I both recognized the danger brewing when Langham stood abruptly, knocking his chair back to confront Caballo. They were on level playing field as far as musculature went. The tempers were big, swinging like a pendulum, and that was dangerous. If Mary Ann was really as valuable as everyone said, it wasn't wise to keep her in the room with such volatile people. I stood and cupped Mary Ann's elbow, using it to guide her out of her chair. You're getting out of here, I mumbled, grateful Danny seemed to be on the same page. He took her other arm, and the three of us darted out the door. Mary Ann's arm was thin, and the nearly translucent skin felt too breakable to be real. I helped Danny walk her up the stairs, perplexed at how light she was and how stiff her movements were. It felt like moving an elderly woman. She'll be all right, Danny assured me quietly. That's how they always get when there's a council meeting called. It's why she usually stays away from them. She doesn't need the excitement, especially if we're going to be training you tomorrow. Just help me get her up the room, yeah? No problem. Mary Ann leaned on me. I'm sorry I'm making you help me. I know you're still on the fence about all this. It's just not good for me to be going all evening. You don't need to explain yourself to her, Danny snapped, directing a scowl at me as if I'd demanded anything of the girl. It's okay to be tired at 8 o'clock at night. Still, this isn't what she was expecting. I'd hoped to look stronger for her and not tip my hand so soon. She cast me a look laced with shame at her feeble body. I didn't used to be like this. It's all right, Mary Ann. Danny's right, it's late. I was thinking of turning in myself. I helped her turn the corner when we reached the top of the stairs, making sure we didn't go too fast for her. Dread passed over me as I pictured myself in her same weakened state, wondering if Tearaway would similarly, someday, suck the life out of me. Thank you for reading Chapter 22 with me. If you want to read ahead, you can get the ebook right now. It's for free on all major retailers where you get your ebooks. And you can download that today if you want and read ahead. This was Chapter 22, so you can start at Chapter 23 and keep on going. Or you can wait till next Tuesday when I read you the next installment of Tuesdays with Tuesday. See ya.